Welcome to the Legal Innovation Forum podcast series, Leading at the Intersection of Business, Innovation and Law. I'm Lucy Saddleton, Managing Editor at the Legal Innovation Forum. Brought to you in association with Luminance, this episode features a panel discussion from the Legal Innovation Forum Toronto 2026 on building a resilient legal tech stack. Our speakers discuss how leading legal departments and law firms are rethinking their technology foundations to support AI adoption, improve operational efficiency, and future-proof their operations.
I'm Brett Sullivan. I lead a global customer engagement at Luminance. Luminance is an AI contracting intelligence company. My background, actually, I was a customer of Luminance for a number of years. I liked the product so much that I came over. I was at Boston Consulting Group running legal operations there. And now in my space, I oversee implementations, and I kind of relate from both a customer perspective and now being in-house, able to kind of speak to our customers across the consistency of how we deliver our implementations. I'll pass it over to Simon.
Sure, thank you. There's nothing like being called OG to start a panel. It's probably how my son would describe me, OG, although he's 12 and now he says things that are old are uncle. That's so uncle. And one thing that's uncle is that picture of me, which probably is pre-COVID. But I'm Simon Wormwell. I'm a Chief Strategic Enterprise Initiatives of the Legal Operations team at Osler. My background is legal practice, so I was in the financial services practice for about 6 or 7 years, and then saw the light by moving to Osler to be a knowledge management lawyer. So I've been sort of in the KM innovation and then legal technology space for about, I'll be 20 years this year, which means I am legit OG. And so at Osler, I oversee a lot of enterprise-wide legal technology and legal process improvement projects, as well as oversee our library.
You think you're pixeled, mine's in black and white.
Right, it's true.
Adam Minielly, I love data architecture. I am the Director of Legal Operations and Reporting at Sun Life. My primary mandate is focused on our external legal spend. Prior to Sun Life, I worked at several firms, 2 of those, Simon, in pricing, practice management, and business intelligence.
Morning, I'm Sacha Fraser, Chief Legal Officer at LCBO, also responsible for procurement. And prior, IBM, Xerox, and McCarthy's, we are in the middle of a fairly significant future state modernization, including legal ops. So we're delighted to be asked, thank you, Andrew, to be here today.
My name is Melissa LaFlair, Deputy General Counsel of Strategy and Operations for the Legal and Compliance function at Manulife. So that's a global remit. My life is this role was a patchwork quilt, not my real life, my work life. Started as a corporate securities lawyers at Davies and then Torrey's. Worked to GC at a private equity company, then a consulting business, then a legal operations role at WSIB, and now here. And it's not the typical linear path, but I think having all those various different perspectives and experiences has really helped me see what does and doesn't work in different environments and apply it now where I am.
Great. Well, thank you. First question is going to be for Simon. So Simon, to start, what does resilient legal tech stack mean from where you sit today? Is it about flexibility, integration, risk control, data quality, or all of the above?
Can I take all of the above?
Take all of the above.
I'll take it. I guess resilience from my perspective really means trying to do something that withstands rapid change, right? And that's certainly where we are. And maybe we can think about this panel as being, how can I try to screw this up as little as possible? And what are some strategies for that, given the rapid pace of that change? I can go through some of the elements that you mentioned in your question. Certainly maintaining flexibility is very, very important. And I think, there's a real risk of overinvestment right now and overcommitment. And it's always not a great idea to over-rely on a single vendor for all the reasons around commercial risk and continuing the viability of solutions and not needing to put yourself into that corner. And obviously when a certain type of technology takes off and is adding, different types of value that we're trying to quantify and are struggling to quantify almost, that becomes even more important, right? And I think we're still a little bit too early to put all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. And so I would caution against longer term commitments, as appealing as that might be from a commercial perspective. I think there's going to be enough shift in the market still that that would help you maintain that flexibility. I think we're also seeing that even with the advent of AI, there are still enterprise level use cases and more practice specific use cases. And part of resilience is being able to be agile and do the right things with the right tool at the right moment, is being mindful about the relationship between enterprise and practice specific tools. That might well change over time. There might be a theme, at least for me on this panel, but I'm not sure. This is really kind of working itself out. And oh, by the way, we're all in this together, so enjoy. But I still think, as of right now, you still need to have that combination of enterprise level and practice specific platforms. And you might also need an exit strategy, right? You have to ask yourself, what if the horse I've chosen for this particular application or this platform isn't, what I expected it to be, or there are shifts in the market. Think about what your options are and have that be part of your stack or your potential stack. Stay on top of the market to make sure what you might need to sub in and sub out. And even in the prep for this panel, we were talking about just that. And one of our, Sacha's talking about her own potential exit strategy, right? And how she's monitoring that. And the data, to the extent your tools might be housing your data, think about the exit strategy for that. Right, and so that's something that can be negotiated with your vendors around cost, time, what level of support you'll get from them. So just some things around flexibility. Integration, of course, your things need to play nicely with each other, and that's something where you really need to rely, and I think rely not just on what vendors say they can do, but also on your own organization's assessment of that, and ask really tough questions and try it. And I'll just add two other things around resilience. One would be governance, right? And so having defined standards for how we procure tools, how you select tools, and having a common understanding about that in your organization can help manage that risk of looking at the same thing and how something might fit into your existing ecosystem. And so that has to be a relatively structured exercise where there's lots of transparency internally. And I've been in situations where that hasn't been the case, and you might start to make technology selections and go farther down a path that you might like to, which would get in the way of your ability to be agile or resilient. And a clearly understood ownership around technology will also help you. And ask really hard questions of vendors as well. So the vendor selection piece is obviously part of this, what we're all trying to unpack right now. Someone in the audience who spoke last week talked about, take that actual use case to the demo. And I'm not taking credit for that sort of notion, but I think that's a really good idea. Think really detailed fashion about what you're trying to get out of technology before you pick it, and ask questions about how that vendor can not just do that, but support it as well. And so I think some of those things taken together can speak to resilience.
Great insights. Just when you're speaking to Luminance, keep the hard questions away, please. Melissa?
Yeah, I think what I would add is really understanding the need and the base requirements that are not negotiable. So what is it that you are going to need your today's self and your future self, and have those core elements in whatever system you're in so that you can plug and play and have a more module approach with, you need your base core that you're relying on, but you need to be able to plug things in, and your ability to plug things in is going to depend on how complicated, and lawyers, we love to overcomplicate things and go into way too much detail. You lose flexibility when you go into too much detail and you go too many layers down. You have to find that sweet spot of where do you have enough that you've got consistency and you've got some rigor and you've got some structure, but not so much that you're stuck if you have to move and you have to figure out how to untangle it and how to work with something else. So, and I think the AI has unlocked so much power, because before, with the devils in the details for the lawyers, and they're trying to get, I don't even know how many folders down that some people have in their, filing structure. Filing structures, I think, that approach is sort of the blockbuster thinking, and the Netflix is sort of the data document pool where things are tagged and metadata. You need to have some base that you can rely on and link it to. But that whole, that system assumes that one end document has one life and one purpose for one team, and that's not reality. The reality is that that same document in the bottom nest of somebody's folder system is probably useful for 3 other teams for some related work. And so being able to find that work easily means you have to think differently and you have to architect it differently. And I think that AI has opened up a whole different way of thinking and finding and working, but it means you have to double down for resilience and flexibility on having what is that core. Or like, I'm not going to know how 80 different people tag, so you want to have some consistency. So there's a base that you need, and then you need to be able to add to that base individual customization, because people all work a little differently. And if I bring one system in and make everyone work that same way, it's going to work for maybe 3 of the people, and another 15 it won't, or it'll work really well for 15 and 3 will be in misery. So you have to have the base that works for everybody, and then the ability to customize and add the bits and pieces that make people's daily lives easy while still within that structure, so you can find things, move things, add things. So it's being centered and flexible at the same time.
Well said. Adam, line with you.
Yeah, I think Simon hit the nail on the head. It starts with governance, data governance. That's your foundation. When you have the governance, you build the data integrity, and then you build the credibility. If you don't have those pieces, people won't use the tools. It doesn't matter how fancy the tech stack is. So building that resilience starts at that foundation. So it starts with that foundation.
Great. Okay, many organizations have strategic data spread across matters, contracts, finance, people, knowledge, and business systems. Where do you start when the data is fragmented? Melissa, let's start with you.
Nobody has fragmented data. It's a tough question that I bet pretty much everyone in this room is dealing with right now. It's not just fragmented, is it consistent and high quality? Is it curated and reliable? And I would start with, again, what is the base need? What is your most critical data? Where is there the most risk? And what system houses that? And get that one organized and use that as your base and then work out from there. Because this is, you have to, take the elephant one piece at a time. You cannot swallow it. You're not going to fix it all at once. So do a risk assessment of, and an opportunity. Where's the most relevant, most reliable, most important, and then fix that first, and then work your way out.
Great. Simon?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what was just said, of course, and this is an area where there's a real potential for scope creep, where we think about all the data that's in our organizations that we think might have a business use. And it's also another area that's really ripe for overinvestment. There's all kinds of platforms, lakes, lake houses, other bodies of water you can spend a lot of money on, and it's important not to think technology first, which I know no one in this room would do. But part of this is really just starting with the thinking that Melissa was referring to, right? And so we are also doing this, as Melissa said. Lots of us are in this place, and we are, as a firm, trying to do better with the data that we have around our mandates with our clients. It's good, but it could be great, and it could be great for all kinds of reasons inside a large law firm, right? From how do we market our experience, how do we price our work strategically, how do we do reporting strategy, search, knowledge management, AI outputs, all those things. And so you have to sort of do some of the hard work around what are the business purposes for the data, and then have an inventory and a schema for where those things sit and how they're connected. And that's no easy task, right? Like often an organization might not have that complete schema or might not have a complete inventory, but that's like your starting point to be able to have meaningful conversations with your stakeholders inside the firm. And from there, you're sort of talking about data needs, data requirements, and then trying to say, what's the future state? What is the scope of this data that we really need? Not everything needs to be front and center and accessible by and interrogated all at once. Let's take a strategic approach to this, and that's going to inform your choices down the road. How much money do I need to spend? How long is this going to take? What tools am I going to apply to this? What are my outputs, right? And so that gets you to your technical requirements. This is like an area coming from a legal background and then a knowledge management background, and then I had innovation in my title, and now it's other things. I didn't feel comfortable. This is an area where I felt I've had to try and educate myself, right? And certainly getting and relying on some expert advice here early on, even just from a let's explore what our needs are perspective, I would highly recommend or consider that. There'll be some vendors who are in this space who would come along and do that with you at the outset, but you might also want to get some third-party advice on this piece.
Yeah, and just to add some color commentary from kind of the vendor perspective, I see that as kind of discovery, like foundational phase one. Before even, of course, you can approach us, but like before you really are starting to discuss with us strategy around implementation, having a really firm understanding of what's the quality data, going through those cleansing exercises, prioritizing, let's just say from my standpoint, like the contract types that you want to report on, having the internal understanding so we can bring that into a priority exercise to be able to put that implementation plan together so we're rapidly achieving ROI fast and consistently.
Is it fair to say that like technology and data harmonization, like that's coming along, right? Like that's a big undertaking, and defining the scope of that data that you want to harmonize, I assume is important. Plus, as AI gets better, you'll be able to do a little bit more extraction and categorization and harmonization as well, right? And so all these things, I assume, are coming together, and we're all in it together.
We're all in it together.
I would also add it's an opportunity to assess what data do you actually need, right? Like there is a lot of stuff that gets collected that never gets looked at again. So why are we collecting it?
Exactly. Yep.
Well, I'm just going to riff off that point is, when you go through the transformation, you have legacy documents and you have go forward documents, and sometimes you want to just put a stake in at the beginning of this fiscal, it'll go here, or we'll go back X years for this reason, but it's because the lift and shift of all the legacy is Herculean, and most of it you'll never look at.
Yeah.
So.
Great. So a question for the group. Is the goal really a single source of truth, or is that too simplistic for legal? When you do need different structures for different tools, outputs, or risk profiles, what does that look like?
I'll take that one. And I'm going to bring it to the contract context, so the enterprise contract repository, contract lifecycle management. And it's riffing off what Melissa said earlier. One of the benefits of a nonlinear career is you've had the vendor hat on, and then you're a buyer all of a sudden, and you know all their tricks, right? So, you have that lens, which is helpful. And also, what Simon said about exit strategy. You almost want it, weirdly, you want to be thinking about disengagement while you're starting a relationship, because many of these tech relationships, unfortunately, don't always last in perpetuity, or fortunately, because you have to evolve with the marketplace. So it's important to be thinking about exit strategy, but also redundancy, and not just, the system going down and having access to that document somewhere else. But it's that stickiness with the vendor. And some of it's about convenience. I mean, we've all, got that text on a Saturday night, can you send me the X contract? I'm like, could you self-serve, please? It's in 3 different repositories you have access to. So we want to train our internal stakeholders to be a little bit more self-help. And sometimes that means not having one single source of truth or one-stop shopping. And what drives those decisions, I think, are a couple of things. One is access controls. So if one repository, is where the lawyers and the contract managers are going to have higher access rights, whereas another one is just PDFs locked down. So you do need to double up. And one of the other drivers, at least for us, has been licensing. So if you've got a couple of platforms, we have a sourcing platform and a contracting platform, it happens that the licensing is more open and agile, and the platform's more user-friendly. So we necessarily chose to double up. What's key if you're not going to go with one single source of truth is the change management, the communication, so that all the stakeholders in your organization know what to use, when, and why.
I think when I think of single source of truth, the relationship between that and single pane of glass, which I think we'll talk about shortly, is, I think, something to be mindful of, right? So this is, where does your information sit? And obviously, I think we're going to a place one day where there'll be a lot of aggregation of information and applications onto a single, solution, and where we might be, and that's where we might sit to do work. But at the moment, that is very, very hard for large law firms like ours to think about a single source of truth for all the data that we might need. It's really about the connections, right? And so we have lots of entrenched systems, both operationally in finance, pricing, billing, HR, learning, but even on the practice side as well. And I guess often people talk about this in the context of layers, right? And so there's a technical way to talk about layers, but there's also this idea of having a content layer, which is all of our work product, our collaboration, our communication, our closing books, our documents. And then a context layer, which is taking data from some of these other systems that bring the context around that product. And it's that we're going to apply our applications to get great outcomes, which would include AI, right? And so if we go back to the previous question, this isn't about all the data for all purposes. This is about a strategic approach where you can make the right connections and have the right corpus of data to do what you're doing. So that a single source of truth is possible, but it might not actually be necessary to get the outcomes that you want.
And I think just looking at it from just an e-billing perspective, we have to have one single source of truth where all of our data is going into. So that starts going back to the first point of the data governance and data integrity. If everything that's being put in is correct. So that data, but then, excuse me, what we're finding as we peel back the onion a little bit, it's not just the data going in, it's how the data is being extracted and being distributed, because there isn't the consistency of data fields being pulled in. So then, while it's being pulled from one true source of data, the way it's being pulled in various data fields doesn't match. So that reconciliation piece becomes difficult. So that's where, again, the data governance is so important, even with the one source of truth.
Got it. And what's the outcome of that? When it's poor inputs that you're saying?
It creates a lot of extra meetings. It helps. We have the conversation. We understand it's not reconciling, and sort of problem solve from there. This is a new sort of process that we're building. So now is our opportunity to get it right.
Great. Melissa?
Yeah, I look at it slightly differently. It's sort of a combination of everything that has been raised. I see it as a consistent set of knowledge, information, and data across systems. So it's not necessarily housing. We do have data lakes, which are incredibly important. There's a lot of mapping required because we have a lot of different systems that are, pointing in there. And it doesn't matter whether it's all together or in disparate. It's how do you aggregate it and have consistency? And that's what that naming, as long as everything's called an apple in each of those systems, it doesn't really matter. The single source from my perspective is the user needs to know with confidence, when I ask for X, I'm getting X, and I'm getting the same apple that everyone else will ask, however they're asking. So it's more about a consistent output and understanding that this is the information we're going to get depending on how we're accessing. And I think it's also important with that single source of truth of understanding, I was talking earlier about the nested documents. Most of the systems allow you to create copies of those documents. So what is the final document? It's in 10 different repositories, and there's one that people are supposed to remember when they're busy to put it in because that's where the official record goes. Nobody does that. Yeah. And you have, and so you're trying to build all these complex systems, which I think technology is going to get to the point where everything gets tagged, so you can add and remove tags as needed as the needs change, and you can figure it out, and you don't have to over-engineer. You have to be consistent. Having confidence. If your e-billing system calls them all apples, make sure that your document management system calls them apples too, and make sure your matter management so that you can find them. And you also decide, do I need to know that it's apples, or can I just say it's fruit? As long as everyone's using fruit, we're good. So knowing the level of detail that is relevant for how you're going to use it, and having consistency, you can build a single source of truth It's more easy. It's easy to do it with certain technology, but that's the outcome you want is people to have confidence that when they're asking for something, they get what they need and they understand what it represents. And so that takes, speaking of something else earlier this morning, communication is critical. It doesn't matter what the system design is. It doesn't matter what the drop downs are. It doesn't matter how it's being architected. If I'm using it one way and filling it out one way, and Adam's filling it out another way, it doesn't matter that we spend all that time and energy. If we haven't communicated and said to each other, here's how we're going to use it, then all that effort was kind of for naught. So the user experience, the training, we'll get into this later, but that stuff is, the single source of truth is a combination of the people and the process and the technology and how that ecosystem is working in harmony. That's what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, so that makes so much sense. So quality data equals trust equals it helps with adoption of certainly rolling out platforms like this. It's kind of what I'm gathering from the panel.
I wanted to say trust first. But it does come down to user trust, right? I mean, as legal professionals, we often don't want a right answer. We often sometimes also want the right answer. And so having that sense of trust and understanding on sources, that's what the data is all about. And that's if you understand that the governance is there and it's all communicated, and that's going to take you to the next level. So.
Great.
And if the trust isn't there, people will find workarounds and of course have adoption. And
then it's seen as a standalone tool,
Right.
not embedded into the process.
not a workflow process tool.
Exactly.
And they'll spoil the fruit.
Those apples.
You brought it all? Yeah, it is. All right, we're going to transcend into kind of risk, and a question for you, Melissa. How do you balance experimentation with AI against the diligence required to bring new vendors into a regulated environment?
It's really tricky. There is no easy answer, and it's iterative, right? So, we are very bold and keen on AI at Manulife. Everything I'm talking about today is my personal opinion and not spokesperson for Manulife, but the environment that I see is that you create an environment that is being thoroughly vetted by your security teams, and you know that you're in a safe space, and then you allow some experimentation there. I think the experimentation is critical and the safe space is critical. I think for vendors trying to get in, especially if you're looking at an environment like Manulife, which is global, we have so many different regulators that care about what we're doing. And we have jurisdictions that, we operate in that they could be like, why do we care that that's what OSFI wants? And I was like, well, OSFI cares and we care because we're, that's in Canada and Ontario. So you have to figure out an environment. What I would encourage, because it is really hard, especially in our organization, bringing new technology in, it's a very onerous process going through all the vetting. And because we're so big, you can often have similar technologies being vetted in different parts of the organization that you don't even know about, and they might get there first. You're like, okay, so we spend all this time. I would encourage vendors to think of building a sandbox that's a true sandbox where people can truly test it. It has dummy data because we've been given sandboxes and you have to go and clean documents and figure out what can go in. Like if there's an environment there that people can just play in and sort of test it out and figure it out, that it's not in their environment, it's not creating risk, it's populated with stuff, so they can figure out how to play with it. That'll help make the business case and the effort that has to go in to bring a technology in. It's easier for people to fight for it when they've experienced it and seen it. But it's iterative, right? Because it's changing so fast, and what AI can and can't do, and what people don't understand about it. But the more safe space sandbox and let people play within your environment or outside, I think that's a way to move forward with the uncertainty.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to platform strategy now. Given how quickly vendors and AI capabilities are changing, how do you avoid betting too heavily on the wrong platform? Simon, I'm going to start with you.
One thing we're certainly finding at our firm, which I'm sure is common, is it takes a lot of effort to keep up to date with developments, even from the products that we have in-house. And so, the rapid rates of releases, of the people, process, and technology pyramid, the technology is taken off. And so it requires a lot of energy. We do, to some degree, need to rely, for the products that we have, rely is not the right word, but leverage, but might be the information that they have at hand about their roadmap and how do we kick the tires on a new feature, and just be constantly in communication with them. And we've actually dedicated resources and tasks and phases of work to this piece to keep people up to speed. But obviously that has to come with a keen eye and to be reasonably skeptical about what vendors say and keep them honest. I've mentioned this before, here I think seeking some external advice, even as from a network like this, right? I think one of the benefits of this community is we do share at the right level, and I think understanding our all mutual experiences based on our own requirements can be helpful within the limitations of what those conversations look like. I mentioned already shorter term contracts. I think thinking about redundancy and exit and flexibility is still important. Also, avoiding silos internally, and so I don't think any organization is perfect at this, and I've seen at the firms I've worked at challenges with this, but from a procurement and selection perspective, really getting all the right stakeholders in the room and thinking about how that aligns with strategic thinking, whether it's at the executive level or the partnership level. And now we all have AI strategy committees made up of different types of talent, right? And so that consultation needs to happen, and there needs to be, law firms are frustratingly slow sometimes because they're consensus-driven organizations. So if you're working at a law firm, this comes with a caveat. But I think it is also really important to make sure that there's transparency around procurement, because there's no, you can quickly get yourself in a position where you're not meeting your own business requirements. And also understanding what betting too heavily on the wrong platform can mean lots of things. It might mean a vendor that might be less viable in the future, and we work with some vendors like that where we kind of take an early bet, but you have to go in with eyes wide open and do your due diligence about the company itself. And also, the wrong tool might be on the operational side. Once you have this in the building, you need to run it, maintain it, run tokens through it, have resources around it, have a support system for it, support your users for it. Understanding that operational component is really, really important as well. That's where this network can come in, plus getting some representations from the vendors you're working with.
Great, well, thank you. I'm going to switch over now into change management. We touched upon it a little bit, but how are you getting lawyers and business stakeholders to actually change the way that they work, rather than just giving them new tools? Sacha, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I think it's a series of disciplines, and whatever your organization is into, whether it's business transformation, organizational change management, OD, they all have to happen, or some sort of lean or agile methodology. But you need some process rigor and discipline around how you take people through change. And I think one of the biggest pieces, and as I was trying to jump into the double Dutch skipping rope on the last two conversations, I think, really, really important to have the right people in the room through scoping, through design, to really test the workflows. I mean, you can only have a single platform or a vital few platforms if you can squeeze all the functionality you need from the out-of-the-box solution. And so, so part of all that is understanding early on what the the legacy represents, what the to-be ways of working are going to be, and to help the organization along. One thing to watch out for, is just transformation fatigue and super user fatigue, because it's almost always the same people that you keep tapping to do this, and to figure out ways to do it efficiently, especially if your platform is cross-functional. How do you get to the hub? How do you get from the hub to all the spokes that are going to be using the various new platforms in the organization? When you're getting to your training, you want the right balance of instructor-led recorded artifacts, And it's sort of an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, because if you don't do enough of this up front, you feel the pain later. So it's just, I think it has a real flywheel effect when you do it right. The other really important piece is to understand the value proposition of what you've invested in, test against the business case, and then, be clear on, aligned on, and continue to retest your value KPIs, your operational KPIs. Think about all the other halo effects, like the new business intelligence and knowledge management you're getting, the things that are harder to track and value, and use, the picture paints 1,000 words. So the earlier you can get your storyboard out, and some really good slideware to visit town halls, walk people through what you're up to, the adoption rate, the fear factor, it's having your ambassadors, it's all of the above. And then last but not least is the org design, because usually what comes with tools is, a shift in how people work. So you've really got to knit that all together.
Such a great point. One of the things that we do stress at Luminance is like setting it up, the project for success. And it really starts with, and this may be a new term for some of you, like a change canvas, right? Painting the picture of the why, and then the benefits of bringing in an AI technology, because at the end of the day, we want to get employees comfortable with the change. And the first thing that we need to do is paint the picture, to your point, of the reason why we're bringing the technology in, and the new ways of working, how we're weaving into the organization. So that spoke to me.
Yeah, and the more people you can get involved in, whether it's a sandbox or a safe, retrieval augmented generation environment. At IBM, we used to gamify it as well, right? Yep. So it's drip feeding.
Great. Melissa, over to you.
Yeah, I would say it's, beg, borrow, steal, cajole, threaten, entice, all of that is needed, because most of these technologies are being rolled out to many, many people. And you don't know what the motivating factor is for each of those people. And if you build it, they will not come. That is maybe it works in baseball and movies, but it certainly doesn't work with legal tech. And you're going to get input from people, but everyone has a different perspective. So you have to triple down on human-centered design. You have to triple down on the user experience. You have to be patient and have training after training, because most of these people, you're bringing the technology in because they are crazy busy and they don't have the cognitive load bandwidth for learning something new. They don't want to learn something new. In my experience, a lot of people would rather spend 4 hours doing something that technology could replace because they know how to do it and they've got the certainty and they've got the control of the output, than spend 2 hours learning how to do it and they'd be able to do it in 5 minutes. It's that investment and having them understand the journey, and that more and more of the success of technology is being measured on the adoption. So if you are not thinking about change, your technology will fail because the adoption will not be there. And the change, it's not at the end of train them how to use it. It starts, as you were pointing out, at the very beginning when you decide you need it. How do we help socialize it? How do we help people realize they need it? And it's sales. You're in sales. It's kind of weird that you're trying to sell something that's going to help them.
So true.
But you are in constant sales mode again and again and again. And then when it becomes a habit and they're adopting it, but making it easy to digest, making it easy. I love the picture comment, because there's so many things you see rolled out and it's like 11 pages of text. It's like no one's going to absorb that. They're not, because they don't want to do it in the first place. And so you have to entice them. You have to make it easy to digest and easy to use. So, almost more work is on the change part and the people part than on the actual tech.
That's exactly right. I mean, we put the percentage out there. 70% of the time we want you spending on the transformation is internal. On the change management across several dimensions, it's the 30% of working with our teams, to your point there.
And I think so much, you come with a tech stack or a tech solution, it can seem so overwhelming, right? Imagine just giving someone Excel and saying, here, it's going to solve all your financial problems. So it's understanding people's workflow and the pain points in each workflow and saying, this tech solution will help you on this pain point. And then working from that solution. Okay, now I get it. Now there's the solution. Now I can move on. Now I can move on. Instead of this broad, you can solve all your problems. It's sort of one solution at a time.
Great point. So I'm going to stick with you, Adam, for a question. What is one mistake you would warn the audience not to make when building or modernizing a legal tech stack?
Coming back to the first point, it's dealing with your data. I mean, Andrew keeps having me here, but I keep saying the same thing over and over again about clean data and data integrity and data governance. That's the big piece. None of this stuff is going to work unless your data has a good structure and it's clean.
Right. Sacha?
Yeah, it's sort of a double negative, but don't ignore all the non-tech processes that run in parallel. You really gotta, that's your time to optimize them, as well as, you know, the inputs like your templates. So don't do things in parallel, not in sequence. It really helps.
Melissa?
Yeah, I'd say double down on the user experience. Like ignoring that is folly, and assuming the tech will solve it is also not a good suggestion.
Sarah?
Yeah, it's like a flashback to design thinking when that was, I think it's cool, but it was really cool in our industry 10 years ago. And that end user piece does resonate with me. You can't forget the persona that you're trying to help and the pain point that you're trying to solve. So that's just UI, UX in the tool, but it's also focusing your stack on the things that you actually need. And I'd also say this feels like an arms race right now. And there's a real tension between speed of implementation, demand of your users, and then trying to get this right and remaining resilient. And so, you know, it's not an exciting answer, but I'd encourage people to still not let the technology lead and stick with your guiding principles and your process.
Great. All right, rapid fire, last question. What is one practical step every organization, represented in this room could take in the next 90 days?
Use your various networks in your industry to find out what your peers are doing, what's working well, what's not. It's amazing when you get a bunch of legal ops and CLOs and tech people in a room like today, but in the context of what, you know, a smaller discussion, the truth always comes out. You know, the things that people might say in an open environment really come out, and that helps a lot.
Melissa?
I'd say find the pain points, like canvas people and ask like the data, what are their actual pain points, and then figure out how to triage and have a list of the, you know, top 1 to 3 that'll have the most impact. And, you know, maybe you've done all the low hanging fruit. I don't know, things keep changing, so unlikely, but you know, find those things that are actually making a difference in their daily life. Is it, you know, something that's slow to respond, figure out how to speed that up. Like just what is an irksome day-to-day thing that helps build the trust we've been talking about.
Great. Adam?
Don't build a tech stack in isolation. Make sure that your current legacy systems and your data speak to and connect with the new stacks. Then you'll have a cohesive tech stack integration. But if it's broken anywhere, then the stack is no longer a stack. It's silos.
So I think if you're thinking about your technology options and you're concerned about it, I would draw pictures. So it would be, you know, here's our universe of solutions, here's our universe of information, here's our universe of users. And that will help you think about it. It'll help you brainstorm around what you need. It'll just sort of set the stage for the next stage of thinking. And it's something that's fun to do with teams.
Great. Well, thank you to the panel. Thank you for the audience for listening. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for listening, and please stay tuned for the next episode.